Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
And now we have reached what I call the heart of the matter on Liberty Nation Radio, the segment that we call Talkin Liberty. And it's when we're rejoined by our regular contributor, constitutional lawyer, LibertyNation.com legal affairs editor. But forget all of that. What he actually is, meaningfully beyond all else, is our guardian of individual liberty, Scott D. Cosenza. Hello, Scott.
Well, I'm puffed up to 6'5" here, Tim. That's how I'm doing.
I'm trying to get you as pumped as possible.
For sure.
Let's talk about federal, and I'm using air quotes here, secret police activity in Portland and Chicago and Philadelphia, as if it is like the East German Stasi that's being sent by Trump to these cities.
It's that's right. So firstly, I think that for the sort of camo-wearing secret police types, it's only in Portland to date. There's federal law enforcement activity in those other cities, and Trump's talked about it. But right now, only in Portland do we actually have them on the ground. And it's one of these things where I think people who care about liberty and fidelity to the Constitution, like myself, reject the notion that there should be any broad or even perhaps less than broad federal law enforcement power, but also recognize that the idea that the federal government doesn't currently have that power under our laws and statutes as recognized, I think is fantastic and silly. It's one of these things where it's like, where have you been? Yes, you're right. This is awful. But also, we've gotten here because of the last, 50, 100 years of encroachment in our liberty. So while I think that the behavior of the federal officers is not commensurate with an appropriate reading of our Constitution and the powers that it gives the federal government, I also know that this is something that the federal government does all the time. We've talked, Tim, about 3 felonies a day many times on this show, and those are federal felonies we're talking about, not state ones.
Well, now let me ask you this question then. Let's just take Portland, but it's relevant to other cities as well. If the politicians who've been elected to lead those cities and to protect the people of those cities and to assure safety are unwilling to do it to the extent that they're not protecting federal property, federal facilities that are under attack, who should protect that federal property and those federal facilities, if not federal agents?
When these federal officers act in defense of federally owned property, Tim, that's probably their strongest case for being there and their actions. But what they do to protect that property has come under criticism that I think is warranted.
Specifically what?
Specifically, seizing people off the street without sufficient probable cause to necessitate an arrest, and then taking them elsewhere for questioning. And that's the charge of kidnapping, which I believe, at least in some of these cases, may technically be true. Now, I'm not saying that the people who were seized didn't commit federal crimes. It seems like the evidence indicates that they have, or the allegations rather suggest that they have. But the act of taking someone off a street without sufficient cause to arrest them, that is that's not legal. The Federal Protective Service chief has admitted to that very activity in Portland. So the federal government is struggling to deal with the crisis in Portland. There is zero help from state and local authorities, right, and people are amassed nightly around that building to try to break in and burn it down.
Repeatedly.
Absolutely.
And again, the political leadership in Portland and in the state of Oregon refuse to do anything about it, which makes me think that the nuanced argument of the way they're dealing with it is going to be lost on voters who are like, he has to do something, and if it's excessive, at least he's doing something. But that's up to the voters to decide. Scott, on a related story in some sense about probable cause, justifiable actions in the kind of climate, supercharged racial climate we're in now, let's talk about Mark McCloskey, the guy from St. Louis.
And his wife.
Who were charged, who this week were charged with felonies for wielding guns to protect their property after protesters had broken through the gate in their community, and they say they were protecting themselves, but apparently that's not flying.
Tim, it's a Soros prosecutor, Kim Gardner, who's been accused of being, sort of an anti-Second Amendment activist, and I think the record bears that out with her tweets and social media profile. But she has offered the McCloskeys a diversionary program from her office. And
what is a diversionary program?
So it's kind of, it's one thing where I don't know if her offer is genuine or kind of a joke, but it's like this is the kind of thing that she was elected to institute, which is you get these sort of underprivileged youth who get in trouble, and they get, instead of a criminal record, if they keep their nose clean for a certain amount of time, they go into the diversionary program, and then therefore, the charges are dismissed without a record. So I don't know if that's a serious effort to bring the McCloskeys into sort of in line with the law. I can tell you their gun handling, Tim, was very troublesome to watch for anybody who knows how to handle a gun.
But that wasn't what they're charged with, mishandling a
I think they're charged with being Trump supporters, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
No, they're not Trump supporters. They're actually not Trump supporters.
They're not Trump. They actually aren't. Huh?
No, if the legacy media informs me, Tim, that they're Democrat. They're trial lawyers, so they're
they're Democrats.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
Almost 100%.
But what they do at least, is they believe in the right to keep and bear arms, and so that's enough, I think, for Ms. Gardner to see them as the enemy.
Well, they at least believe in it for themselves.
Yes, sir.
And for others, we don't know yet. Well, here we go again with Trump and undocumented immigrants, who he now has said he's going to try to restrict from the census.
And so these are illegal aliens, which we're talking about. People who are
Scott, they're undocumented immigrants.
And it seems quite clear to me, just like those people are here illegally, they also must be counted in the census. The U.S. Constitution in the 14th Amendment and in Article 2.
It says people.
Yes, it says people.
It doesn't say.
It says whole people, I think, in one instance, and in another instance, people, and then there's like exclusions for slaves and Indians. And
so there's no
instances.
Exclusion for people who were here illegally because there weren't any then.
Well,
I mean, that's...
Tim, it's until the First World War, you could travel across any international boundary in the entire world with any amount of currency and a .45 under your hip and not break a law. And boy, weren't those the good times.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.